Welcome back to Arkansas First Reports. I'm your host, Candy Cox, and today we're joined by someone who's no stranger to taking on tough issues and exposing the truth. Missy Bosch, contributor for Arkansas First News, is here to unpack some key legislative bills moving through the Arkansas General Assembly and to share insights from her investigative articles that have been stirring up much needed conversations.
Yes.
From medical negligence to school accountability, obscenity laws, and public record access, the episode will challenge and inspire you to engage with these pressing issues. Missy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Candy.
Absolutely. So we are just going to go ahead and dig in because we have a lot to talk about.
We do. We had a lot.
Yes. Missy, let's start with House Bill 1168, which proposes criminal immunity for healthcare professionals for negligent acts or omissions. Your article raised red flags and how this bill could impact families and patients. Can you briefly summarize your concerns for our listeners? Now, we know that this bill is right now it's just kind of dead right now.
Right.
But there is a potential that it could be brought back up. And so I feel that it's important that we go ahead and discuss this. So go ahead and give me your concerns.
So when I first read this, there's already laws protecting medical professionals.
Right.
Especially when they sign waivers before going into a surgery, people know what's going on. But what this does is if someone does not know and they still proceed with a surgery, a vaccine, a medication, and they don't tell you what the outcome could be,
Right.
this protects them for negligence. And so what I noticed right away was that any doctor could claim negligence even though they knew that something was going to happen and they did not discuss that with the patient. And I think this came up right after the COVID-19 vaccine injuries that have been reported. And as our family had gone through, we were in Boston Children's and, there was an unknown diagnosis for our daughter and they were doing the best that they could. But when something popped up with a medication that was essentially killing our daughter, and we brought that to the doctor's attention.
Right.
He told other doctors that we had no idea what we were talking about and continued to give her the medication. And we had to go to the staff, fire him. And thankfully, they listened to us and they brought a new neurologist in. But it was at that point that we realized if they wouldn't have done that, we would have had to sue to keep our daughter alive because he couldn't claim negligence at that point. But we could have seen him saying, oh, that didn't, that's not a side effect. And that's what he tried to say at first. But we found medical journals that said it was a side effect.
Right.
So that's why this was very, it kind of stuck out to me.
Right.
That we need to be aware of protecting everyone, but not only the medical, this protects like custodians that work in a hospital. It says any person that works inside of a medical facility, freestanding or with a hospital, anywhere. And so it's just not something that I would personally want protection for, like for people. Because this even includes hospice. And you know how many incidences occur in these long-term facilities for nursing homes or hospice, but also inside of someone's home, which I bring workers into my home every day to help care for our daughter.
Right.
And so now I can't sue them because they claim negligence,
Right.
So that's just kind of what I saw.
Yeah, so this bill to me, and I'll let you speak to this, it kind of blurs the line between the medical negligence and malpractice.
Exactly.
And so why should Arkansans be alarmed about this?
Because there are so many cases right now of malpractice that you can sue someone for malpractice, right? But now if they say, oh, I didn't know, they can't be sued at all. And so when you look at hospital staff and there was let's just say they go to court, it makes a medical professional look bad if they claim negligence because they didn't do their due diligence to research something as well. It makes them look not like they're good at their job.
Right.
But if they can keep their job and not get sued, all these medical professionals are going to continue to, because they're not going to lose money. They're not going to worry about researching and finding out. And so I think Arkansans really need to be aware of this bill.
Right, right. I agree. You've spoken about your family's personal experience with medical negligence. How would a law like this had affected your ability to advance your daughter's care?
Well, if thankfully the hospital didn't handle it the way that they did,
Right,
um, and if this was in place, because the doctor did keep saying that's not a side effect, that's not a side effect, even after we showed him medical journals, and let's just say she did pass away, we would not have been able to sue him at all, and she would have been lost, and he would still be practicing and doing the same thing to other children.
right.
And so I think that's why this is so important that it doesn't get passed.
Yeah,
Because malpractice is already there. I don't think any doctor should be able to claim negligence in a way that um, they are allowed to continue to do something over and over and over
right.
and say, oh, I just didn't know. Even though patients continuously have side effects or things like that. But it's not only medical professionals, it's also the staff, which is, I just don't understand that at all.
Right.
Why would a custodian or, someone who cleans a room be protected under this?
Mhm.
So
It's a very problematic.
it is. It is. The whole thing is very problematic.
And as someone who also has a daughter with high medical special needs, and we had to really advocate for her
Right.
when she was born, I see a lot of problems with.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So, okay. So we really need to be keeping an eye on this. And as if it comes back up and it moves through, we will make sure to let our listeners know.
Yes.
Next, let's talk about the current article that you wrote just this week, called "The System of Silence."
Yes.
And your investigative piece on this sheds light on how some Arkansas schools are shielding abusers and silencing victims.
Yeah.
This issue hits close to home for many families. Can you share what first compelled you to investigate this story?
Yes. It was, I was just scrolling through TikTok and a local family had posted, the wife, Ashley Hardy.
Uh-huh.
She had gone, let's see, she is from Quitman School District.
Okay.
And she had gone to the Arkansas Department of Education board and given a testimony. And I listened to her testimony, and when it finished, um, the only thing that the state board said was, thank you for your testimony, and it has been brought to our attention that local school boards do not have to allow public comment for parents to express these concerns, but just know that we're always open for public comment. Thank you. Did not say, we are so sorry for what you've been through. There was so many red flags that popped up. It just enraged me
Ye
because first of all, I've already been fighting for parents to be able to use their First Amendment right and speak at school boards.
Right.
But that is very stifled. They are told what they can and cannot talk about, which is completely against the First Amendment. But when her story came out, I instantly just started researching. I reached out to her. I reached out to other locals that were helping her, and I instantly got her phone number, and I think we were on the phone for like an hour, and she just told me everything. And once that happened, I remembered that there was also a family in England
Mm.
that had gone through the same thing, and they had no avenues of getting justice for their daughter. And so that's what started my investigation into Quitman in England. And right before I was going to publish a longer article on just systemic cover-ups, especially of bullying
Mm.
with the sexual assault, a local man in Cabot was arrested, and one of his victims publicly came out. She's now 19. But she gave her story. She did not mention any other minors, but she said the school did nothing. They actually, even after he was guilty on 43 counts of sexual aggression towards children, his classmates in junior high, the school placed him back in school. with some of his victims.
Wow.
And now he was just arrested for raping a minor and contributing to a minor and delinquency, like all these different things. And it just it it took me a couple weeks to write this because it's so heartbreaking when you
Yeah.
talk to the parents and these victims. But the problem that I saw was that because the school just did not expel him and say, you've got to get him help before we ever let him back. They put him in ALE for the rest of the semester in junior high and then brought him back and put him in regular class. And the students, the one that I spoke to, she is so sweet. She's like, if they would have just got him help, if they would have just said, you need to go to, go get some kind of counseling or something, but they didn't. And so she was like heartbroken that this continued.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, reading the article itself is very shocking. And you give some very shocking examples of school administrators failing to report abuse and retaliation against parents. What systemic changes do you think need to happen to ensure schools are held accountable?
Um, at this point, what we're finding, there's a few of us kind of investigating this. Um, at this point, there's no retribution or repercussion to these schools at all because they have their own school board that's elected. So that means they are their own entity.
Right.
And the school board is responsible for what the actions of the school. And so when you go to the Arkansas State School Board, they're not necessarily over the school districts, which is wild because the school districts have elected officials. And so the law needs to be changed, or now a school choice. School boards should not be elected positions. They should be either appointed by the community or chosen by the community, because right now they're protected under law because they have their own jurisdiction, essentially. And so I think we need to take a long, hard look at different avenues of, the state will have to, the state's going to have to intervene because right now the school board's like, if you want to speak to the school board, you have to go through the superintendent in most cases.
Right.
And if it's something about the superintendent he does not like, sorry, you can't speak.
Right.
And you have to just abide by that. And if you go to the school board meeting and you stand up and speak out, their police officers will arrest you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the most disturbing trends you uncovered is the prioritization of offenders' rights to education
Yeah.
over victim safety. How can this mindset be addressed legislatively?
Well, I think there is one bill that's being introduced right now.
Uh-huh.
But what I have a problem with in that bill is that if the school still doesn't follow it and they put that there's no repercussion still
There's no
listed.
teeth
There's
in the bill.
nothing.
Evan and I were talking about that at the Capitol this week, regards to that bill. There's just no teeth there.
None. Yes, you cannot put.
It's a great bill, but
Yeah, you can't put a student back in class. But
yeah,
what if they do?
yeah,
So what's going to happen? So I think, just looking at it as a whole, thankfully, in these couple of cases in Quitman in England, there was an investigation started by the office, the federal office of civil rights.
right.
But the schools failed to investigate originally the Title IX sexual harassment. And so that is up to the administrator, right? Because he oversees everything, or his deputy or assistant that oversees all the bullying and sexual harassment cases. And I think they should be personally liable for that because that is their decision to not investigate. And so I think on both of those accounts that they are under investigation for failing to report the Title IX. So
Yeah, yeah. So, right, and you touched on that with the Title IX in your article, where the investigations and the federal involvement in some of these cases. eh, Do you see that as a sign of progress, or
I
do you
don't,
think?
because no, once you get to a certain point, both of them went to the licensing standard board PLSB, um, and they were denied
Right.
to look into the ethics of but I looked up the PLSB and it is a board full of teachers and administrators. So why would they want to expose their colleagues?
Right.
So we need let's put parents on there that are not part of the school system, because we know there's a very short list of ethics that, teachers and staff have to abide by.
Right.
You don't need a teacher or administrator to decipher those or decode them. I know how someone should act in a school. But I also feel that, if I'm correct, during the Obama administration, there were rules put in place that you may not punish students to the capacity that they were punished before. And I think since then, it's just become unruly in classrooms. And administrators do have their hands tied in certain cases, especially with bullying. I would not say with sexual harassment. This is a whole different avenue, especially the one in England,
Right.
where she was actually sexually assaulted. A lot of it is sexual harassment, touching, groping. But when you get to the point where you're raped
Right.
inside of a school, these happened inside of a school. It's not like after or
Right.
before. This happened in a school, and the administrators failed at their duties.
This article, when you published it and I was reading it, it really turned my stomach. And
Yeah, it's hard.
I just want to thank you for the work that you're doing on this, because I know that you've got another piece coming out.
I do.
Part
Part
2
two.
to this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I know it's a hard piece to investigate, but I just
Well, the bullying is also heartbreaking, because these parents, I cannot believe the amount. I can't put them all in my article. The parents are personally telling me stories, giving me emails, giving me, "Don't worry, we have it handled," kind of investigation at schools. When they go to the local police, "No, it was done on school. We can't
Right.
handle it until the school reaches out to us." Well, the school never reaches out to them because it has to be reported to the state. And so essentially, they are covering it up and leaving the bullies in school.
Mm.
And it's
And
just,
lest we forget, they are mandated reporters.
they are mandated reporters.
That's right. That's
Mhm.
right.
Everyone in a school system is a mandated reporter.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that kind of is a good segue into House Bill
Yes.
1028. And this one deals with the library policy and book challenges.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bill that has sparked significant debate about censorship
Right.
and public access to information. Missy, what stands out to you about this bill?
Well, this was the first time that I kind of made a name, I guess, in Cabot, because I had recognized instantly there were like 4 or 5 books that were sexually graphic,
Yes.
and and the librarian said, this is censorship, and this goes against the American Library Association, the ALA policies of what we are supposed to do. We don't just have books for straight white Christian kids, is what she said. And I said, well, they're all kids, though. It doesn't matter their religious background, their race, their ethnicity, their anything, their sexuality, their children, and they're minors. And so a lot of these books that we've noticed are junior, they call them young adult books.
Right.
And we as parents have to go through the lengthiest process.
Yes.
And then they choose teachers and staff to review the books. And guess what happens? They approve the books.
Well, the reading from the ALA website,
Yeah.
they're not reading the books themselves.
Right. They're probably doing a synopsis, and they're like, oh, this is great because this, brings all these different things. Well, there are other websites that you can go through that parents have personally read books and given critiques. But this one right here would allow parents and local community to and to hold them accountable.
Yeah.
That, my child cannot go into a library and everyone, like, let's just say one child picks out a book and they're like, oh my gosh, you got to read this book. And of course, I'm not there to say no.
Right.
And what I was told is they're not allowed to card children under 18 or tell parents what they choose. That's protected.
Yes. Why is that protected in some of these books? Let's be really honest. Cody Crumpton did a great interview with Celine Hardliners because, we've been fighting this issue in Saline County for a long time. And some of these books are hardcore porn.
Oh,
If
yeah.
I was to, go buy a magazine, with these details and the pictures and the descriptions and give them to my child, I could be arrested for pornography to my children, but it's okay for my child to go to the local library and check this out? Are
Right.
you kidding me?
Well, and, there are some, award-winning books, and one was The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. And she is a phenomenal author, but she retold her story in The Bluest Eye about her, incest rape by her father in detail. And my problem with that is that it should be, a college level. If I took that and read that even to my 18-year-old, he'd be like, "Oh, mother, stop reading. This is disgusting." Like, stop reading these details to me. If his own mom cannot say them out loud and talk to him about this, why is the school allowed to let him have that book?
Well, and when we went to the quorum court meeting here, we were told that we could not read this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, stop, stop. Well, if we can't read it with adults in quorum court, why are our children allowed to check these books out?
Right. Right.
This bill proposes repealing the offense of furnishing harmful items to minors and emphasizes policies prohibiting book banning. Do you see this as protecting free speech or a potential risk to the community standards?
Well, what do you think? Let's go back to you, because it's just there has to be punishment.
There has to be.
Um, if you are given the title media specialist at a school, which is now what librarians are called, media specialist
Right.
within a public school setting, and all books go through you and your one or two people that work in there, and you know the titles, it is your responsibility to know what is in that library. Um, and unless it's a book report that is required for, let's say, AP
Hmm.
literature in high school, it should not, it should not be there, and there should be punishment for that.
Right.
Because you are not there as a teacher or a media specialist to push agendas, to allow children to secretly live out their sexual fantasies.
Right.
You are there to make sure that they are educated in math, language,
Mm.
and, class, not sexuality. That is not the purpose of school. And that's where we've let it go to.
Right.
So, yes, I am definitely not liking this at all.
Yeah.
Do
you think this bill is being prioritized now? And what should Arkansans keep in mind as it moves forward?
Well, I think, has this one actually gone through? It was adopted, wasn't it? It was read and adopted.
Yeah.
I don't think it's gonna pass,
I don't either.
but I think that if they keep amending it to, they don't wanna have to leave a media specialist, because essentially she's hired or he's hired by the superintendent, but why is the media specialist the one that gets sued for it or held liable? I think they might have to adopt some of that because ultimately the law says the school board is responsible for what is in the library. And so I think whoever wrote this, Springer, needs to, or Collins, needs to figure out how to rewrite this because I think it's on the wrong side completely,
Right.
but they need to look at the language specifically because right now it is, it's still, even after laws have been passed, a beast
Right.
trying to go into the library, getting access to their library books. And if you do, like I was told, oh, it's been off the shelf for 2 years, but why is it on your online catalog? And as of right now, children in kindergarten can go onto the online catalog and check out high school books.
Yeah.
So they are not protected either.
Yeah.
And we need to make sure that that's changed.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, so let's move on to House Bill 1062.
Okay.
Missy, House Bill 1062, also known as the Teacher and Student Protection Act, aims to address violence in schools.
Mm-hmm.
Given the issues you've reported on in schools, what's your take on this bill?
I just don't think it has any teeth at all because, um, they should already be abiding by this. Like, I know teachers are probably like, "Hey, do not put that student back in my classroom. He or she assaulted me. He or she assaulted this other child." But what I'm noticing when I talk to parents is that teachers cannot speak up
Mm.
to say, "Don't do this," because they either before the Fair Teacher Dismissal Act was repealed, they would get moved to a class they didn't like.
Right.
They would get moved to teach, self-contained or things that's not their specialty. And so now with the Fair Teacher Dismissal Act repealed, if teachers speak out, they can just be fired.
Mhm.
And so the superintendents and whoever's in charge of, bullying and abuse in the school, they should have been abiding by this before as adults. Like, where's your common sense? If there is you know, a student that has continuously bullied people, sexually assaulted them, why would you put them back in class? Because if they assaulted one child, don't you think they're going to assault another one, even if you move them to another classroom?
Right.
But if it's not, there's just no penalty for that. And parents will still have to go through the same steps of, can I talk to the school board? No. Can I file with the PLSB? Yes, but we deny your request for an investigation. Okay, I'm going to go talk to the school board, the state school board. Um, but the school board still doesn't do anything. They can just recommend. So it's just gotten to the point where there needs to be a very large overhaul of everything right now. And I don't think this bill has any teeth
Right.
at all.
Right. I mean, the bill proposes moving students who exhibit violent or abusive behavior from the classroom permanently in some cases. Um,
And
but
there's alternate learning. So I don't think schools are using the alternate learning environment appropriately. When you have sexual abusers or physical, children who assault others,
right.
um, they can be sent home and a tutor can be sent to their house to teach them
Mhm.
in a home setting. And they're not using that. They're using this alternate learning environment school that they've created, which usually does not have like a school identifier. It's still associated with other schools. And so now you have a bunch of sexual offenders and a bunch of physical abusers
Right.
in the same place.
Yeah.
And what we're noticing through witness testimony when we look at video is that then cops become abusive towards these students and treat them like criminals. Teachers are treating them, they're still a child.
Right.
So you can't put them in this, unless you're going to kick them out of school, you can't put them in another environment and then say, I have the right to subdue this child like a criminal, or because you are going to have all these different behaviors. And now it's just like, it's a very scary environment.
Right.
I think ALE should be completely eliminated. But it's my personal opinion on what I've seen and heard, but I don't think schools are utilizing ALE in the appropriate way where they should be sending kids home and sending a tutor to their house.
Right. Right.
So,
Okay, so the next thing that I wanted to talk about today is, which I think that this is going to be very interesting also to parents, which um, everything that we've talked about today so far, as a parent, and all of my kids are, we've got two left, and we're homeschooling, but in school, like my heart just
yeah.
is so pulled. But let's touch briefly on two other bills. One, HB 1051, and there is SJR 1, which amends the school start date, and SJR 1 requires a supermajority to vote to change laws on public records access.
Yes.
What? Why? Why are we watching these bills?
So FOIA right now, Freedom of Information Act, is
Mhm.
definitely not being followed, and people are trying to hide information. And I think that when you have, no matter who comes into government in Arkansas, um, whether it's Republican or Democrat or independent,
Mhm.
if they're trying to hide something or they want to uncover something, I don't think that they should just be like, hey, let's pass this bill, let's gut this, and it just needs to be a regular vote, majority wins. Because this should since, 1967, it should have been, the law of the land, and it should not be something that we can tamper with, because with more communications, I know that certain schools tell their staff, "Delete your emails at 5 PM every night." Well, those emails we're finding contained, graphic incidences between the parents and teachers. Well, now that's on their side, it's been deleted, so, "Oh, we don't have that email, it's not in our possession." Um, so as they continue to gut it, just, whoever comes into office, whatever their preference is, if let's say they have the supermajority or whatever, they can just keep tampering with this bill back and forth. And so I think that it really does need to be 3/4 just, and I would love for it to be a constitution, like it needs to be in our constitution that this is protected. No matter who's in office, you have to be open and transparent.
Mm.
We want to know where our money is being spent. We want to know what goes on behind closed doors.
We want to hold our government accountable.
Oh, yeah. And that is a Republican thing, a conservative thing, and that's what
thing.
when you see conservatives put forth bills that are trying to etch away at this, you think, why are you sitting in that seat?
Right.
What is your goal at
Right.
this? Who are you trying to protect, cover up, whatever?
Right.
And it actually brings more questions to who can we trust in our government,
Exactly.
So I think this one is one that we need to definitely keep an eye on.
Oh, yeah. I think we're all keeping our eye on.
Yes. Anything dealing with FOIA.
Anything dealing with FOIA. It's so important for our ability to hold our government accountable.
Yes.
And anytime they're tampering with that, tells me there's a problem in government.
Yes.
Yeah. So on House Bill 1051, it seems straightforward, but how do changes to school start dates impact families, especially working parents?
So does this bill say that it has to start after Labor Day,
Let's go look at that real quick. I've got
or they just can't hold? When I read it, I was kind of skimming over it. Well, right now I know that it was most schools were going year round,
right.
and I've homeschooled, I've public educated, I've private educated. I just know that in my house, my kids do learn year round. We
Mhm.
constantly are making sure that their brains don't
Right.
forget everything. But, I think as a whole, it needs to be the same across the state if it's a public school, because if you have a student transfer
Right.
and then all of a sudden they're like 6 months behind this because the other school started at a completely different date, or 3 months behind, or the curriculum, whatever it is, I think that it's hard on parents because you have to adjust accordingly and figure out, okay, is there a school that's on my schedule that I can move my child to? Or, um, a lot of parents have, and I don't really use the excuse that, hey, summers for kids and parents have already figured that out, because I think it would be easier on parents to go year round or
Mhm.
a certain time, but I think it needs to be standardized.
Right.
And that's the only thing that I, think. And I think that this one, I think it protects Labor Day.
Mhm.
I know I'm from the North. We don't start school until after Labor Day because that summer is precious and you need that,
Right.
you need that time. But being in Arkansas,
Yeah.
It's-
I mean, I'm from the South, but, Tennessee originally, and we never started till after Labor Day. I don't know what it's like now in Tennessee, but we never started
no.
till after Labor Day.
And I'm a fan of summer vacation. I'm a fan of kids getting a break. I think an 8-hour school day is too much, especially since they're not learning anything right now. I don't think there should be homework. Like, I am kind of like that parent that is, if you're in my class for an hour, I'm going to teach for 15 minutes. And then for 45 minutes, we're going to do the work that's associated with it. If we don't finish it, we'll start it again tomorrow, because your time at home with your family is precious. And we're paying you the big bucks to teach the kids. Don't make the parents do it at night,
Right.
because it really is, parents work. They want to hang out with their families. They want to go to sports.
That's one of the many reasons why we chose homeschool, because our kids were coming home with so much homework.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my goodness,
They're exhausted.
we're doing homework in some cases up till bedtime.
Yeah.
And so we now homeschool, and our kids have a lot more freedom, and we have a lot more freedom
Oh,
with our
yeah.
family.
Oh, yeah, and, um, and I'm an advocate for complete change of education just since I've educated 4 kids and then a special needs kid,
Yes.
and that is she's still brilliant but behind, and the school absolutely failed her by putting her in self-containment. Just eliminated everything that I had retaught her after the hospital. It was just terrible. But I feel like, we know as parents, "Hey, this doesn't take 8 hours."
Right. We had a little bit of technical
Yes.
difficulties there, Missy, but we were talking about, homeschooling our children, and parents know that we can get this done, you know, less than an 8-hour day with our
Yes, yes,
children.
and I think it's important that, people at the Department of Education, they stop treating school as a daycare.
Yes.
Like, there are requirements, and you come to school, this is what you're gonna learn. There's standards, and nobody follows them,
Right.
and so I think that's what needs to change with public education, but we should do a whole 'nother podcast on
A
that.
whole nother podcast on that. That's
Okay.
right. Well, Missy, it has been enlightening, conversations today and having you. But before we go, what message would you like to leave with our listeners about the importance of staying informed and holding our legislators accountable?
I think it is important that we go to the Capitol, we log into the, ArcLeg and see what bills are coming up, and you read through them. I mean, I know when I was there the other day, I should have been sitting in 4 different rooms at the same time because there's so many bills that affect my family personally, and I don't think in this day and age we can trust our representatives to do what's right for us, and so we have to stay on them to remind them, "Hey, you were elected to do a certain thing." And so I think that it's very important that also we get our news from people who are willing to tell the truth, and we're not bribed, and we're not silenced, because I know they're still trying to do that with me and my community, and I just don't care because kids are so important, and they're the next ones that are gonna be running our state,
Right.
and that's where my heart is.
Mhm.
I look at my kids and I'm like, "You have so much potential, and it's not fair that my kids who get me full time don't that they have a leg up than the kids who spend 5 extra hours at a public school
Right.
that don't get that kind of, attention and education that my kids get." And so I just feel like we as parents, we as citizens in Arkansas need to be vigilant. And I think with Trump being elected, President Trump, I think there is a renewed sense of hope
Right.
that our voices will be heard. But I still think that it's important that we stay connected locally and make sure that we hold our elected local officials accountable.
Right. That's where it really starts.
It does at home.
Local.
Mhm.
It starts local. People do not realize how important the local school board is, and
Yeah,
the
and
local officials
right.
to get engaged. And one of the things that I love about Arkansas First News is that we are for the people, by the people,
We are of
are
the
people.
people.
So we're bringing, each of us our own perspectives
Yeah.
and transparency, and, we're bringing the truth. And we all have a passion for conservative values,
Right.
for the truth, and for engaging in our communities to help our people
Yeah.
get involved. And I know so many people, they just freeze when you talk to them about going to the Capitol during the legislative session and getting
Oh, I know.
involved. And, I tell people all the time, it's not as intimidating as it sounds.
No,
These are you've elected these people.
they're just people.
They're just people, and you
Mhm.
can go in and sit,
Right.
and you'll be amazed. I remember years and years ago when I first got involved in going during the legislative session, I was, floored by how bills were passed,
Oh, yeah.
and it will really make you it will stir in your spirit to get involved.
Right.
It
Right.
will stir you.
Right.
And so we really want people to get involved. Follow Arkansas First Reports, Arkansas First News. This is going to wrap up this episode. And Missy, I just thank you for your expertise and your advocacy.
Thanks.
And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.